The bells tolled over the Red Keep like a heartbeat too loud for the morning air. A storm was brewing off the Blackwater, but in the royal bedchamber the true storm had already begun. The Queen's screams cut through the stone like knives. Her golden hair clung to her sweat-soaked face, twisted with pain, rage, and something else, fear. Maester Pycelle hovered at her side, though it was the midwives who did most of the work. Lady Jenna held the Queen's trembling hand until it was nearly crushed, and standing against all protocol, as always, was Sir Jaime Lannister, his golden armor glinting softly in the candlelight. He never left her side. "Push, your grace," the midwife whispered. "The babe is nearly here." "Then take her," Cersei snapped. "I'm not some fat milk sow. Get her out of me." Pycelle flinched, but the midwives did as they were told. Sweat pooled on the floor, blood followed, and then a cry, a shrill, raw wail tore through the chamber, not unlike the victorious scream of a warrior queen claiming her first conquest. "She's a girl," the midwife whispered, wrapping the small, blood-slicked bundle in cloth. "A strong one." Cersei's head fell back against the pillows, lips parted as her body shuddered with exhaustion. The babe was placed into her arms, and for a moment the room fell into a rare silence. A girl. She had a head full of dark, damp hair, black as tar, the same thick curls that Robert had once boasted of in his youth, the kind that Cersei had once found charming before the wine and the whores wore the charm down to a dull ache in her soul. She didn't speak, not when Jaime stepped forward with awe, reaching toward the babe before catching himself. Not when Pycelle smiled and whispered about Baratheon's strength. Not even when the door opened, and in walked the king himself, smelling of boar and blood, his face red from laughter and wine. Robert Baratheon, conqueror of the Seven Kingdoms, looked down at the girl in Cersei's arms and said, "Gods be good. She's beautiful." Cersei said nothing, though her jaw clenched at that. Robert took the girl from her arms as if she weighed nothing, cradled her in one calloused hand, and brushed the dark tufts of hair from her brow with the other. "She's mine," he said, almost in wonder. "A true Baratheon." Then, louder, so all could hear, "A lioness and a stag. My daughter." "What shall she be called?" Pycelle asked, quill already in hand. Robert didn't hesitate. "Lysandra," he said. "Lysandra Baratheon." The name echoed like prophecy. Lysandra grew fast. Too fast, Cersei always thought. She was walking before her first name day, riding before her third. By 5, she was already mouthing back to her tutors with pointed questions that made even Maester Pycelle stammer. But it wasn't just her mind. No, it was the way Robert looked at her, like she was his second chance. He took her to council, meetings, sat her on his lap as he listened to Varys drone on about grain prices. She played with a dagger once, while Littlefinger talked numbers. She asked Sir Barristan Selmy what it felt like to kill a man before she even learned to sew. Cersei hated it, not because Lysandra was dumb, no, far from it. She hated it because every time she looked at that little girl she saw Robert. And Robert had taken everything from her, her choices, her youth, her peace of mind. She had tried to hate the child, but she couldn't. It was worse than hate. It was fear, fear of what she might become. A daughter of the king, the only daughter of the king, the only true-born Baratheon. The cracks began small. Joffrey, golden and cruel, would shove Lysandra during their play. She would shove back harder. He once tried to cut off her doll's head. She broke his nose. Robert laughed. Cersei did not. And each time Lysandra disobeyed or outshone her brother, Cersei scolded her. Each time Robert praised her, Cersei drank. A little more, scowled a little harder, but nothing could dim the girl's fire. Not yet. Not even when, on her 10th name day, she stood in front of her father in full leather armor and asked, "Will you teach me to use a hammer?" He blinked, then roared with laughter, and said, "By the gods, you're truly mine." The sea around Dragonstone churned with wind and salt. But Lysandra Baratheon stood still on the rocky cliffs, her crown catching the last light of the dying sun. In her hand she held the letter that had changed everything, the one written in Lord Eddard Stark's own hand, revealing the incest, the betrayal, and the treason her mother had cloaked in royal robes. Behind her, Ser Davos waited patiently, not saying a word. He had become a quiet constant in her life, like a stone in her boot that she had grown fond of. "She lied to me," Lysandra finally said, her voice low. "All my life. She said she loved me." "She may have," Davos offered cautiously. "But love and power rarely walk the same road in King's Landing." Lysandra's jaw clenched. "Then I'll burn that road down." She turned and walked back toward the fortress, wind catching her black cloak. Every step now felt heavier, as if the truth had added weight to her blood. Robert's blood, the blood that now demanded a crown. But the path to it wasn't paved in loyalty, it was soaked in it. The first step in her campaign was the North. If she could win Robb Stark, if she could convince him that her war was his too, then she would have the Northmen at her back, and the Lannisters would feel their jaws close in from both ends. Her uncle Stannis, ever cold and bitter, thought, "It was a waste of time. They'll never kneel to a southern queen," he said. "Ned Stark died because of Lannister lies, and your mother's." "Then I'll offer him the only thing he wants," Lysandra replied. "Justice." She wasn't just fighting for a throne anymore. She was fighting to undo what her mother had done. The meeting with Robb Stark was arranged under strict conditions, neutral ground, minimal guards, and no treachery. Lysandra rode in wearing black leathers, her golden antler crown resting on a braid, coiled like a whip down her back. By her side was Ser Davos and a few of her Dragonstone guard. Robb arrived already looking older than his years. His grey eyes, once soft, were stone now. Lady Catelyn rode beside him, her face unreadable, and behind them the North watched with sharpened teeth. Maege Mormont, Great John Umber, Lord Karstark. A line had already been drawn. "You look like your father," Robb said, not smiling. "And you look like a man who didn't want to be king," Lysandra answered, dismounting. "But here we are." The two stared at each other for a long beat. Neither blinked. Then Robb spoke. "Why am I here?" "To offer you what was denied to both of us," she said. "Truth and vengeance." Catelyn scoffed softly. "You speak of vengeance, but you're a Baratheon. You sit with Stannis. You carry the same blood as Renly and your mother." "My mother lied," Lysandra cut in sharply. "She lied to me, to the realm. She gave the throne to a monster, and she murdered my father with her silence." That gave even Catelyn pause. "I loved my father," Lysandra said, voice wavering for the first time. "He wasn't perfect, but he was mine, and they butchered him, put a crown on his killer. You and I, we both lost fathers to the same beast, Robb." Robb said nothing. Lysandra stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Let the lions tear each other apart in the south, but you and I, we're wolves and stags. We could finish this war before it begins." "You want my army," Robb said coldly. "I want justice," she replied. "And if I fail, Joffrey will march north eventually. You think he'll stop at River Run?" The silence between them was louder than any threat. Then, to her surprise, Robb nodded slowly. "I'll ride south with you," he said, "but only if you give me your word Tommen and Myrcella live." "I swear it," Lysandra said without hesitation. "I'll protect them from the war, even from my mother." "Then we march together," Robb said. For the first time, something like a smile flickered across her face. And for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. But in King's Landing, hope was poison. Cersei sat alone in the royal chambers, the Iron Throne now occupied by her son, her golden son, whose cruelty grew bolder with each passing day. She had spies in every corner, and now the Raven had arrived. "She's declared herself queen," said Grandmeister Pycelle nervously. "She always thought she was special," Cersei muttered, wine in hand. Even as a child, so eager to be noticed, so eager to be loved. Pycelle looked down. Shall I inform his grace? No, Cersei said, standing. I'll tell Joffrey myself. He should know who he'll be feeding to the crows. Meanwhile, deep in the halls of Dragonstone, the Red Woman smiled by candlelight. She stepped into her flame, Melisandre whispered. Now we will see if she can survive it. The war drums beat low as the newly forged alliance between the Stag and the Wolf began its quiet march south. The banners of House Stark and House Baratheon fluttered side by side, an unnatural pairing to some, but to those who had suffered, it made perfect sense. Lysandra Baratheon rode at the head of her host, her black armor etched with the crowned stag, her face stoic beneath the weight of her golden antlered crown. On her left was Robb Stark, a king in all but title, his direwolf ghost never far from sight. On her right rode her uncle Stannis, rigid, silent, and disapproving of nearly every decision she made, especially this alliance. You show too much mercy, he said one morning. The North will betray us when it suits them. No, she said without turning. The North remembers. Stannis scoffed but said nothing more. He had learned by now. This girl was not so easily steered. Their campaign began not with war, but with reclamation. Together they stormed Harrenhal, abandoned and left to rot. With Robb's men and Dragonstone's disciplined soldiers, they took it without bloodshed. Lysandra ordered the halls cleaned, the banners burned, and the tower restored. I want them to know we're not here to conquer, she said. We're here to cleanse. But while she played at justice, her enemies did not rest. In King's Landing, Joffrey sat the Iron Throne with all the grace of a rabid dog. His latest orders included the public whipping of a stable boy who had looked at him too long, and the execution of a bard who wrote a song mocking his claim. The boy's mother was sent to the dungeons. The bard's tongue was nailed to the city gates. Let them sing now, he sneered. Cersei watched him with a cold knot in her gut. This was her son, her golden lion, the child she had protected but not shaped. She had tried to mold him, yes, but somewhere along the way, something monstrous had taken root. And now, with Lysandra marching with the Starks, claiming justice and rightful blood, Joffrey grew erratic. She'll die screaming, he told his mother. And I'll send her head to Stannis on a spike. Cersei said nothing. She sipped her wine and thought of Maggie the Frog's prophecy again. Younger, more beautiful. She will cast you down, and every time she closed her eyes, it was Lysandra she saw in that damn crown. The court was fractured. Varys, always lurking, said little, but listened to everything. He slipped a scroll beneath Cersei's door one night, unsigned, but heavy with implication. Storm's End prepares to fall. The Queen moves faster than expected. Littlefinger, ever smiling, offered solutions Cersei didn't ask for. Mercenaries, assassins, poison. She's a child, he said with a grin. Children are easy to bury, especially when they still believe in fairness. But even Cersei wasn't convinced anymore that Lysandra was a child. No, she was becoming something else. And far across the narrow sea, word of a new queen had reached the ears of another. In the ruined halls of Vaes Dothrak, Daenerys Targaryen sat beside the smoking pyre of Khal Drogo, her dragons chirping like newborn gods. Ser Jorah Mormont handed her a raven's note, smuggled from Westeros. She read it in silence. A girl, a Baratheon, crowned queen, loved by the people, backed by the North, opposed to the Lannisters. Another usurper child, Jorah muttered. But Dany only smiled. No, she said, she's not like the others. She's in your way. No, not yet. Daenerys looked into the fire, her silver hair glowing red from the embers. She's just a spark. I'm the flame. Back in Westeros, the first true test came at Storm's End, House Baratheon's ancestral seat, now held by Lord Gunser Sunglass, a loyalist to Stannis, but uncertain of Lysandra. When the host arrived at the gates, he demanded to speak to the Queen herself. Lysandra rode up with no crown on her head, no sword on her hip, only a letter. "My father wrote this," she said, "to Lord Jon Arryn. He worried about the line of succession. He wanted Storm's End to belong to me if something happened to him." She handed it over. Gunser read the seal, read the handwriting, the words, and he knelt. "All hail Queen Lysandra, first of her name. Storm's End opened its gates, but peace is short in war." 2 days later, a Lannister assassin was caught inside the keep, posing as a cook. He'd made it into the Queen's chambers. Her personal maid caught him with a blade dipped in basilisk's blood. Under torture, he confessed. He was paid in gold, branded with the Lannister lion. Joffrey had sent him. Stannis wanted to send ravens to every lord in the realm, screaming treason. Robb wanted to march directly to King's Landing, but Lysandra, she said nothing. That night she sat alone, staring into the fire. She held the blade the assassin dropped, small, sharp, poisoned, and she whispered, "So this is how my brother wants to play." Then she stood. Very well. The war had been a chess game until now. But after the attempt on her life, Lysandra flipped the board. The war changed after the attempt on Lysandra's life. Something inside her turned. No longer was she the girl playing queen in plate and crown. She'd been hunted like an animal in her own tent. Poison had nearly touched her skin. Her maid nearly died protecting her. She hadn't wept, not this time. That night when Robb found her alone in Storm's End's great hall, staring at the flaming sword she'd once drawn in ceremony, he saw it in her eyes. She wasn't just wearing a crown anymore. She had become it. "We need to answer," Robb said. "I know. They'll expect a siege of King's Landing." "They won't get one," she replied. "That's too kind. They rode out before dawn with a battalion of 1,000, Dragonstone steel, and Northmen side by side. They didn't head for King's Landing. They rode west, straight for Lannisport, the heart of House Lannister's wealth." By the time word reached the capital, the harbour was already on fire. The gold fleet burned under the night sky like candles at a funeral. Ships sank one by one. Their flags, the proud Crimson Lion, were swallowed by the sea. It wasn't just an attack, it was a message, and Cersei heard it loud and clear. In retaliation, Tywin Lannister marched from Harrenhal with a force of 15,000. His banners joined by those of House Lefford, House Clegane, and House Reyne's last remnants. He left Tyrion in King's Landing to play Hand of the King while he put the Wolf Girl and the Baratheon brat into the dirt himself. But as he moved east, Lysandra moved faster. She and Robb didn't fight him head-on. They outmaneuvered him. Every day they lit supply lines on fire, burned wheat fields, poisoned wells, stormed watchtowers. They didn't kill Tywin's army. They starved it. One knight from House Banefort, captured and broken, said it best: "We weren't fighting soldiers. We were fighting shadows." By the time Tywin reached Harrenhal again, the castle was already lost. Lysandra had taken it, not by siege, not by battle, but by defection. Lord Qyburn, the disgraced maester, had quietly opened the gates from within. He knew who would win. He always did. Tywin stood on the hill, watching as his family's greatest shame, the Black Ruin. He left to burn, now flew Baratheon black and northern grey. He ground his teeth so hard blood filled his mouth. "Tell my granddaughter," he muttered to a rider, "if she wants to play queen, she should learn how to die like one." Inside Harrenhal, Lysandra walked the cracked halls of ancient flame, her boots echoing over scorched stone. She stopped in the old audience chamber, where Mad King Aerys once chained men to walls and screamed at shadows. Sir Davos stood beside her, silent. "Do you think my father ever saw this place?" she asked. Davos nodded. "Once. during the rebellion, but he didn't linger. She traced her hand across the old throne of Harrenhal, carved from melted iron and dragon bone. "I can see why," she whispered. "This place feels cursed." She didn't know how right she was. That night she dreamt of fire, not war, real fire. She stood in a room without walls, surrounded by flame. Her mother's voice whispered, "From somewhere unseen, you'll cast me down, but you'll burn too." Then came the second voice, Melisandre's, clearer, louder. "You are the flame reborn." Azor Ahai returned. Embrace the fire. When she awoke, her sheets were soaked, her palms burned where she had clenched them tight. And at the foot of her bed was Melisandre herself, uninvited, watching her, smiling. "You saw it," the Red Woman whispered. "Didn't you?" Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister, Hand of the King in all but title, sat with Varys. She took Lannisport, Harrenhal, burned the Gold Fleet, and Joffrey wants to send her a box of her own fingers. He poured wine, a lot, of it. "She's not playing the game," Tyrion muttered. "No," Varys agreed, "she's rewriting it." The spider leaned closer. "And that makes her very dangerous." And across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen received another raven, this one from Lysandra Baratheon herself. It was short. "You were born for fire. I was born in it. If we must meet, let it be as dragons, not enemies." Dany read the words 3 times, and for the first time in years she smiled. But not everyone was smiling. In the Riverlands, Arya Stark, now running with the Brotherhood without banners, heard tales of a black-haired queen who rode with wolves and wielded flame. "She's the daughter of Robert," someone said. "No," Arya muttered, "she's something else." At Harrenhal, Lysandra stared into the fire again. The Red Woman came to her that night, holding a blade forged from Valyrian steel. "A sacrifice is needed," she said, "to awaken the flame within." Lysandra didn't blink. "Whose?" Melisandre smiled. "The lion." The night was too quiet for Harrenhal. Lysandra sat alone on the balcony of the East Tower, the wind tossing her braid like a battle flag. Below, the campfires of her growing army flickered like scattered stars. Thousands had come, some for justice, others for revenge, many for the queen who wore the stag and did not kneel. Inside the hall, Melisandre waited. So did the blade. "It must be a lion," she had said. "Only blood of the betrayer will ignite the truth within you." Lysandra wasn't a fool. She didn't believe in fire gods or prophecies, but she had seen things. Shadows that moved without light. Flames that whispered names she hadn't told anyone. She had felt the fire. Still, she wasn't about to murder a Lannister just to prove a point, so she made a decision. 3 days later, the soldiers found the cart. It had been abandoned at a burned-out farmstead on the edge of the Trident, carrying 5 Lannister prisoners captured in a border skirmish. They were bruised, filthy, and bound. Among them Sir Adam Marbrand, 2 Redcloaks, and Tyrion Lannister. Lysandra stood in front of them, unreadable. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. "Fancy meeting you here, niece." "I'm not your niece," she said flatly. He grinned. "Not any more, I suppose." They put the others in the cells below Harrenhal. But Tyrion she kept close, not out of mercy, out of curiosity. He had always fascinated her as a child, the only Lannister who made her laugh, the only one who never looked at her like a threat. Until now. "You going to kill me, Your Grace?" he asked the first night. "Or are we still playing Queen of the Ashes?" "I haven't decided," she said, "but I could use your mind." "My mind is all I have left," he said. "That and my charming smile. Please don't take both." Over the next few days, Tyrion ate well, slept better than he had in months, and watched from a tower window as her army grew. Refugees from the Riverlands, soldiers from the Vale, Even a few iron-born stragglers, bitter with their own. They came with their weapons and stories, drawn not by gold, but by word of mouth, the true-born queen, Robert's only real heir. The girl with the golden crown and the black hammer. Lysandra didn't need ravens anymore. She had a legend, but legends invite enemies. In King's Landing, Cersei read the reports in silence. Every city her daughter touched swore fealty. Every noble who saw her crown bent the knee or fell. "She thinks she's me," Cersei said one night, voice soaked in wine. "She thinks she can take it all." Joffrey scoffed. "I'll have her brought in chains, or bits." "Don't underestimate her," she warned. But it was too late for warnings. A raven arrived that evening, its message simple. The queen calls for trial, by fire or by steel. The lion must answer. Attached was a token, the golden hand of Jaime Lannister. Jaime had been leading a rear guard when he was ambushed by Lysandra's scouts. They didn't kill him, they didn't need to. One lion was enough. At Harrenhal, Melisandre prepared the ritual. The crowd gathered, torches flared in the night. Lysandra stood before them, her cloak billowing in the wind, a steel crown on her head, Lightbringer at her side. But there was no fire yet, and no sacrifice, until she stepped forward with a torch in hand, and threw it into the wooden pyre. But no one was tied to it. The crowd murmured. Melisandre's eyes narrowed. Lysandra turned to them. "I don't need blood to rule," she said. "I don't need my enemies burnt to ash to prove I was born to lead." She turned to Melisandre, voice steady. "I am Robert Baratheon's daughter, not your messiah." Then she turned to the crowd. "I'm not your savior, I'm your sword." The flames behind her roared to life. In the days that followed, more lords sent ravens, more declared for the queen, but not all were pleased. Stannis, furious that she had rejected the ritual, began to pull away from court. Davos warned her that his loyalty was slipping. "He believes you're losing the light's favor," he said. "Then he should look harder," she muttered. "I've walked through enough fire." But Lysandra's greatest test hadn't come yet. One night, while walking the ramparts, a hooded figure approached her. He moved like a ghost. She drew her blade before he even spoke. Then he dropped something on the ground, a dagger, Valyrian steel. She picked it up, stunned, and then looked up to see the face of Jon Snow. "I'm not here for your crown," he said. "I'm here for your help." He stood in the firelight like a shadow given flesh, snow still melting off his furs, a silent storm in his eyes. Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell, Ned Stark's quiet wolf, but not anymore. When Lysandra looked at him, she saw the weariness of a man who had seen death too many times and lived to carry the weight. His eyes weren't those of a soldier. They were of a gravekeeper. He said nothing at first, just stared at her. Then he knelt. "I didn't ask for your allegiance," she said. "I didn't come to give it," he replied. "I came to beg for help." That got her attention. They walked alone beneath Harrenhal's towers, moonlight casting long shadows on the cursed stone. "You've heard the stories," he said, "of the dead, of White Walkers, Whites, the Night King." "I've heard tales," she said carefully, "old wives' fables, terrors used to scare children into their beds." "They're real," he said, stopping, "and they're coming." He told her everything, the Wall, the mutiny at Castle Black, Hardhome, the Night King, the army of the dead, and how they march south now, slow, endless, unstoppable. Lysandra didn't speak for a long time. Then, "You came all this way to warn me." "I came because you're the only one who has the armies to help me stop it." She looked away. "I'm fighting a war against my own blood," she said. "A war I didn't ask for. One I have to win to keep the realm from falling apart." Jon stepped forward. "And what realm will be left if we win? If we sit on thrones made of bones while the dead walk beneath us?" The next day, her council exploded. Robb Stark wanted to trust Jon, but not follow him. Stannis called him a fraud. Davos argued for caution. Melisandre simply stared, saying nothing, until, at last, she spoke. "I've seen him in the flames." They all turned. "The bastard of Winterfell, the wolf of ice, and you, the stag of fire. Together, you stand against the dark." Lysandre's face paled. "You've seen me before, haven't you?" Melisandre nodded once. "I thought you were the only one. But perhaps you're only half." That night, Lysandre stood alone again with Jon on the battlements. "If I abandon the throne," she said, "the Lannisters win. My father dies in vain. Everything I've built, every drop of blood spilled, it all turns to ash." Jon looked up at the cold sky. "And if you stay, everything else will." A long silence. Finally she asked, "What would you have me do?" He didn't flinch. "Ride north, join your armies with mine. Show the realm what a true queen does when death comes knocking." She closed her eyes, felt the wind cut her face. It wasn't fair. It wasn't supposed to be her burden. She thought of Robert, of Shireen, of the blade she pulled from fire, of Joffrey's grin when he sat the throne, of her mother's cold eyes, and then she thought of the realm. At sunrise the horns were blown. Lysandre Baratheon stood before her army, 20,000 strong now, on the broken courtyard of Harrenhal. "I promised you justice," she said. "I promised you vengeance. I said we'd burn the lions to the ground and take back the throne that was stolen from my blood." The army roared. "But now a greater enemy comes, one with no banners, no mercy, no name." The murmurs spread. "I won't lie to you. If we ride north, we may die. But if we don't, we will die anyway." Then she raised her sword, Lightbringer, and it caught the sun. "I am Queen Lysandre of House Baratheon. The Iron Throne can wait, the dead cannot." The silence lasted only a heartbeat. Then came the roar. And so began the march north. Back in King's Landing, Cersei sat alone in the dark. "She's running," Pycelle said. "North, chasing shadows." "Let her," Cersei whispered. "The North will kill her. Or the cold will." But when the door closed and she was left alone again, she poured herself another glass of wine, and she did not smile. Meanwhile, deep in the snow, the Night King opened his blue, lifeless eyes. The stag and the wolf were coming, and he was waiting. The winds above Winterfell howled like starving wolves. The snow fell sideways. The sky, once silver, had turned a sickening ash-grey. And below the walls, across the frozen field, the dead had arrived. Lysandre stood atop the battlements, armor, black as night, antlered crown gleaming with frost. She looked over the sea of corpses crawling from the mist, thousands of them, endless, dragging broken swords and ancient hatred in their wake. Beside her, Jon Snow tightened his grip on Longclaw. "They won't stop," he said, "not until every heart stops beating." And she believed him. Winterfell had never looked so haunted. The castle's halls were filled with people who'd once feared each other. Starks, Baratheons, Wildlings, Tarleys, even a handful of Lannister deserters who had seen which way the wind blew. Every chamber had been turned into an armory or a ward. The crypts held the children, the elderly, and the truths no one wanted to say out loud. "We may not survive the night," Robb Stark said to the War Council. "But if we do, let the world remember who stood here when the darkness came." He looked at Lysandre. "Let them remember her name." The first wave came just before dusk. Whites poured in like a tide of rot, slamming against the wooden barricades, crawling up stone, tearing at flesh. They felt no pain, no fear. They just kept coming. Lysandre fought in the courtyard, Lightbringer burning hot in her hands. Each swing lit up the night. Each corpse she felled burst into flame. She was tireless, terrifying, Robert's wrath reborn in a girl made of fire and fury. They called her the Burning Queen. Jon fought alongside Ghost and Tormund near the gates. Robb led the flank from the eastern wall. Arya, ghost-like herself, danced through shadows with her twin daggers, striking with the cold precision of death. But it wasn't enough. They were being pushed back, step by step, inch by inch, and then the sky broke. A screech tore through the clouds as Viserion, the undead dragon, swooped over Winterfell in a spiral of blue fire. One blast, that's all it took. The North Tower erupted in ice-blue flame. Dozens died in seconds. The walls cracked, panic spread, the line wavered, and in the chaos he arrived, the Night King. Cold, quiet, cruel. He walked through the broken gate like death made flesh, his army parting for him. Spears of ice grew from the ground at his feet. Every fallen soldier rose again, this time on his side. Lysandra saw him. Her heart stuttered. This wasn't war anymore. This was the end of all things. "Get the signal to the Godswood," she shouted to Davos. "Bran's in position. We lure him there. He wants the three-eyed raven." "And what about you?" Davos asked. She looked out at the dead. "I'm the hammer." As the Night King approached the Godswood, his path cleared, until she stood in it. Black stag, golden crown, blade of flame. He stopped. The wind died, and then he raised his hand. From the ground, bodies rose, soldiers she knew, men she trained with, one of her guards, and worst of all, Joffrey, or what was left of him. He grinned, dead-eyed, sword in hand. Lysandra's scream was silent, buried under the roar of fury that erupted from her chest. She charged. The fight was vicious. She cut through whites like fire through parchment, but they just kept coming. One slashed her side, another knocked her to her knees. Joffrey, the white in his skin, lunged. She barely blocked him. They fought like siblings with murder in their bones, until finally Lightbringer plunged into his chest, lighting him up like dry kindling. His body burst into blue flame. Her hand trembled, but there was no time. The Night King approached. She was bleeding, cold, barely standing, but she didn't run. "You want me?" she spat. "Come take me!" He did, faster than she expected, an ice spear in his hand. He hurled it, but something moved faster. Jon Snow. He tackled her to the ground, screaming her name as the spear tore through the air and buried itself in his side. Time stopped. She felt his body go limp on hers. Blood pooled. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The Night King advanced. She crawled to Jon's side, her hands shaking. He looked up at her. You're stronger than any of us," he whispered. "Don't stop." Then his eyes glazed. Lysandra didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood up, covered in blood, fire dancing across her blade, and for the first time, the Night King hesitated. From the Godswood, Bran's eyes flashed open. "This is the moment," he whispered, and somewhere beyond the world, the old gods opened their eyes too. The Godswood burned, the snow turned to steam, ash mixed with blood, and in the center of it all stood Lysandra Baratheon, cloaked in fire and grief, her blade raised against the Night King, whose stare could freeze the marrow in a dragon's bones. The army of the dead had paused, silent, waiting, and she realized they were his breath. If he exhaled, they moved. If he fell silent, they froze. She had seen war before, but now she faced the very absence of life, and she was alone. Jon Snow's body lay in the snow behind her. The man who gave everything so she could still stand, the bastard who was more noble than any king. She knelt beside him, kissed his forehead, pressed her brow to his chest. "I will finish this," she whispered, "for you." Then she rose, again flame in her eyes, and walked toward her death. The Night King raised another spear of ice, his pale lips unmoving, his expression unreadable. But as he prepared to throw, a shadow swept across the sky. A screech. Drogon, Daenerys Targaryen, riding her last living dragon, dove from the clouds like the wrath of old Valyria itself. Fire rained down over the Night King's whites. The courtyard exploded into smoke and screams. Lysandra stumbled backward, shielded by the dragon's wingspan. She looked up and met Daenerys's eyes. In that moment, two queens faced each other across flame and ruin, fire-born, fire-forged, both daughters of fallen houses. But the Night King didn't burn. He stepped through the dragon fire untouched. Daenerys stared in horror. Drogon recoiled, and Lysandra knew if they didn't end this now, no one would. She sprinted forward, screaming, swinging Lightbringer with everything left in her. He met her halfway. Their blades clashed, ice and fire, silence and fury. She fought like her father had once laughed, wild and unrelenting. He moved like winter, precise, heartless. Every strike stole heat from her body. Her armor cracked, her blade dimmed, until finally he shattered her sword. Lightbringer broke with a sound like a dying star, and with it, her hope. The Night King reached for her throat. She couldn't move. And then Arya Stark, like wind, like death. She leapt from behind the trees, Valyrian dagger in hand, the same one once meant for Bran. She drove it toward the Night King's chest. He caught her, but Lysandra, with her bare hand, grabbed the broken half of Lightbringer and plunged it upward into his back. At the exact same moment, steel met frost, ice cracked, and then he exploded like shattered moonlight. The Night King fell in silence, his body crumbling into snow, and the dead, all of them, fell. Winterfell went quiet, and then the weeping began. They buried Jon Snow in the crypts, next to Ned. Ghost lay beside his tomb. The North had never loved a king more, even if he never wore a crown. Daenerys left quietly. She and Lysandra exchanged few words, but enough. "You were the better queen," Dany said. "Even fire knew that." "No," Lysandra replied. "I was just the one who lived." The war was over, but the world remained. King's Landing fell soon after, not to battle but to exodus. When the people learned what Lysandra had done, they turned on Joffrey. Cersei tried to hold the throne with Lannister gold and false titles. But gold means nothing when the dead have walked your roads. Tyrion returned first, accompanied by Arya, by Gendry, and by truth. Then came the northern banners, and finally, the queen herself. Cersei stood alone in the throne room, her wine gone, her son imprisoned, and her prophecy fulfilled. "You think this is victory?" she spat. "You're nothing but a shadow in my image, a child that should have died with her name day." Lysandra looked up at the Iron Throne, the thing that had cost them all their lives. "No," she said quietly. "You're wrong. I should have died, but I didn't." Then she turned her back on the throne and melted it. Lightbringer, reforged in dragonfire, struck the Iron Throne once, twice, until the swords of tyrants broke into dust. She didn't want to rule, but they gave her the crown, because she had earned it. Queen Lysandra Baratheon, first of her name, was crowned in the same hall where her father once drank himself into madness. But she didn't sit on the throne of swords. She built a council of nations. A crown that passed by merit, not birth. A realm that was finally truly united. Years later, children would sing of her, the burning queen, breaker of the dead, daughter of fire and fury. But in her own heart, she never forgot the boy who gave his life in the snow, or the family that tried to silence her, or the fire that never truly left her hands, because queens are not born, they survive.